What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Full 90. It is finally time for the UEFA Champions League final. The Europa League and Europa Conference League saw the favourites in Frankfurt and Roma lift the trophy, and if the same narrative is to be followed, then Liverpool will win their 7th UCL title against none other than Real Madrid. Be sure to drop a like and leave your predictions down in the comments below. I have got a plethora of tips for this game. If I'm looking at my screen here, I have 9 tips as well as an alternative outcome if that better suits your fancy in terms of how you think the game is going to go. We're delving into all sorts of different markets and just the overall narrative of the game. So like I said, be sure to leave your predictions down in the comments below and let's get started. So yes, it's Liverpool up against Real Madrid. Liverpool saw themselves in the group of death. That was what it was called anyway, or labelled as, and they didn't lose or even draw a single game. And then they did have a pretty easy run to the final, especially compared to Real Madrid. They saw off Inter Milan, Benfica, and Villarreal. Villarreal obviously knocking out Bayern Munich in the round before that. Real Madrid, however, despite, to be honest, on the run of play, weirdly being second best, I would say, in every single tie, managed to get past Chelsea, PSG, and Manchester City, the absolute juggernauts. And if they were to beat Liverpool in this final, you have to say hats off to them. Fair play, more than deserving of the trophy. Liverpool have a couple of injury concerns, the main one being Thiago will be missing the game. Virgil van Dijk will look to return to the starting lineup, and Salah was on the bench for the final game of the Premier League against Wolves. Real Madrid have rested more than Liverpool, but to be honest, at the end of the day, Liverpool have had nearly a week by the time this final rolls around, so they'll be, I would say, as rested as Real Madrid. I think once you get to about a week, you're not really going to get any more rested. If anything, you might get a little bit rusty and out of practice. I think if the games are like 3 or 4 days apart, that argument can come into play, but with nearly a week, I would say Liverpool will be arguably just as fresh as Real Madrid. So I do have 2 potential outcomes and narratives that this game will follow, and I'll explain both of them now. So my first one, I actually am going to go for a Liverpool win in the full 90 minutes. And I don't think this will be without Real Madrid asking questions, most definitely, but Liverpool look unbelievable and they know how to win a Champions League final. Obviously, Real Madrid do as well, but I do think Liverpool are strong enough to beat this Real Madrid team, and I think the narrative of the games between PSG, Chelsea, Manchester City showed that Real Madrid can be got at, and their back line is a little bit sus. It's a bit suspect at times, and whilst Benzema and Vinicius in particular look unbelievable, I do think Liverpool can get at them. So my first and main prediction is going to be a 2-1 win to Liverpool. I was debating 3-2, but then you have to take into account that finals tend to be quite low scoring, closely contested, but I am going to go for that 2-1 win to Liverpool. So my first tip is going to be both teams to score and over 2.5 goals at 2.05. We can afford to get this completely wrong. Liverpool are definitely going to score at least 1, but if Real Madrid go and win 5-1, this main tip still comes in, and at odds of above evens, I think that's pretty good. Moving on to the halftime, full-time market, I had 2 potential picks for this one, so I would argue just take whichever one you like. My first one that ties in with the narrative of Liverpool winning the game in the full 90 minutes is draw halftime, Liverpool full-time at 5. I think that's pretty decent, but obviously Real Madrid, they're a second half team really. Carlo Ancelotti will implement changes where necessary in the second half. He's one of the best coaches in the world at doing that, as we've seen this season in the Champions League. But with Liverpool winning at full time, I'm going to go for perhaps 1-1 at halftime, and then Liverpool get a second winner in the 60 to 70th minute. That sort of time. No later than the 80th minute. I think they'd have it wrapped up before then if that was the case. But we now move on to the goal scorer market. I've got 2 anytime goal scorers. The first one, I can't look past it. I've tipped it before. I tipped Benzema to score and Man City to win when that happened. It is Karim the Dream. Karim Benzema to score at 2.5. A lot of Real Madrid's attacks flow through him, and he can score from nothing. As well as that, he is also on penalties. So Benzema to score at 2.5, I thought was a brilliant shout. I think with the introduction of Luis Diaz into Liverpool's side, having Mane play through the middle, that's where my next anytime goal scorer tip is coming from. Sadio Mane to score at 2.87. You could, of course, go with Salah. I think Benzema, Mane, and Salah could all score in this game. And if it's a 2-1, those are the exact goal scorers. Salah, of course, on penalties, but with a bit of extra value, Mane Mane to score. He just gets himself into those positions. He really hangs on to the back line, makes those runs. And with players like Alexander-Arnold and Robertson whipping crosses in and around, over and around the back line, he can score those poacher-type goals, Sadio Mane, much more than Salah tends to do. So I think Mane to score is a good one there. And I do think this is going to be tricky for Real Madrid. If my narrative is that Liverpool will be on the front foot, I think Real Madrid are going to struggle. And they have struggled in this tournament out of possession. Real Madrid look brilliant when they have the ball, but when they played PSG, for example, they looked, I mean, second best is putting it nicely. PSG looked very, very good on the ball, and Real Madrid struggled to handle that. And that is where I think bookings are going to come in. And as soon as I look at Real Madrid, I think the first person that comes to mind is Casemiro. So my next tip is Casemiro to be booked at 2.37. I just think he's going to get carded. You could look at Dani Carvajal as well. But I think those two, they are two of the, I think, 4 most likely candidates to be booked in this game. But if the narrative follows that Liverpool are on the front foot, Real Madrid will put some tasty tackles in there. And I think Casemiro, he's so involved in Real Madrid's game, whether they're on the ball or off the ball. He's the one who puts the tackles in. I could definitely see Casemiro getting booked. And at 2.37, I think that's pretty good. And my next tip is a corner tip. My tip is over 9.5 corners at 1.83 because it's a final. Corners, especially with Liverpool, if they're defensively quite sound, especially when Van Dijk plays, they don't mind the no-nonsense approach of just putting it out for a corner rather than, you know, fiddling around with, like, if Vinicius Jr.'s on the wing and they can get a tackle in and put it out for a corner, they're going to do that. They're not going to take any chances, let him have a shot on goal. They'll get rid of it. Liverpool, on the other hand, as well, they whip a lot of crosses in. That I think Courtois is good for a save. Although Courtois, as a keeper, does tend to catch the ball more than most other keepers. I think if he's really tested, again, no nonsense defending, get it out for a corner and we'll deal with that as it comes. They'd rather have a corner than a goal in the back of the net. So I think there's going to be a lot of corners. I think Liverpool will win the corner count, but the extent to which I'm not entirely certain. I do think Real Madrid can contribute, and I wasn't confident enough to go for a Liverpool -2 corner handicap at even. So I've just gone for the overs. So that way we're looking for corners. We're looking for action. Now, if you think that Real Madrid have a little bit more of a chance, then perhaps it's considered that I've given them in the video so far. I do have an alternative outcome. First of all, the game to be decided on penalties. Either team can win, but the game to be decided on penalties at 6.5. If you want, you could back the initial tips, but then put a small stake on the game to be decided on penalties, because at 6.5, that's a huge return on your stake for it just to go the whole distance. And I think if it gets to especially the second half of extra time, teams might settle for penalties, or they might be so evenly matched that there's no choice but to go to penalties. And Liverpool have, of course, been in 2 cup finals this year so far, winning both of them on penalties. So it's not a far-fetched outcome. Now, also another one, Real Madrid, we've seen it before in the Champions League, and we've seen it this season. We've seen it with Ancelotti. They are a second-half team. They can make changes to adapt to how the game is going, to try and claw themselves back into it. So I could see, if Liverpool don't win this game, I think Real Madrid will win the second half. I don't think Real Madrid will win it outright in the 90 minutes. I think Liverpool are too good for that. So I could see Liverpool winning at halftime, starting strong, and then a draw at full time. So essentially Liverpool winning the first half and then Real Madrid winning the second half by the same margin. Liverpool halftime, draw full time at 13. And then you could combine that and then say the game is decided on penalties as well. In terms of the scoreline, I would probably predict a 2-2 in that scenario. Maybe 1-0 halftime, 2-2 full time, or even a 2-1 halftime, 2-2 full time, something along those lines. So whichever one you prefer, you can take that. In fact, if you just combined pretty much all of those tips with the draw halftime, Liverpool full time, the goal scorers, the cards, you could have a little bet builder of 200 to 1. So even if you just chucked £1 or $1 or €1 on that and it came in, you'd get 200 back. Could be worth a go. Could be quite fun. So I'm not necessarily ruling out the possibility of Real Madrid winning the Champions League, but it is difficult to look past Liverpool. I don't think the fatigue factor of Liverpool having a really long, arduous season, a Premier League race all the way to the final day will really come into play, just because they have had nearly a week's rest. So I think they will be okay. And I do think Liverpool will lift the Champions League trophy. Like I said, the favourites in the Conference League won, the favourites in the Europa League won, and I could see the favourites in Liverpool winning the Champions League as well. So take whichever outcome you like, take which tips you like. I think the goal scorers look good, the bookings look good, the corners look good. It's going to be an exciting game. That is going to do it from me. If you did enjoy this video, please do drop a like and subscribe and turn on the bell so you don't miss any future videos. We might be doing Nations League videos very soon. Let me know if you want to see that, and I will see you in the next video very soon.